The Reverend Dr. William L. Johnson, the third chaplain here at Christian Hospital Northeast for palliative care, and certainly we're glad to have you with us once more. Each week, we share these messages that we hope will bring inspiration and encouragement to your life. Hopefully, you'll find something enriching, some seed that is planted, something that will inspire you to kind of push through the week and maybe deposit something for weeks and weeks to come. That is our desire because we are aware that in our living our lives, we are challenged with so many things. We hope to be an aid and support for you along your life journey. Well, this morning's meditation is entitled Burden or Blessing. Burden or Blessing. It is true that all of us have to face experiences in life, challenges in life, difficulties in life, maybe even ups and downs like a roller coaster. We all find ourselves living our lives filled with all kinds of twists and turns. Old hymn used to sing it, we used to sing it in church that said something like this: life is filled with swift transitions. It is true that life changes on a dime. And sometimes when we're down, it doesn't take much, but sometimes things change, just like the weather. You go to bed one night, you wake up the next, and everything is different as we turn around. However, there are other times when we are up and things are going well, and we find ourselves engrossed in something that's important, and things turn around in a way that makes life really difficult. Whatever it is important for us to analyze things and see them as they are. Many people find themselves dealing with life feeling as if they are underneath a burden. A burden. They're carrying it. They get up and they have to go to work, or they have to go to school, or they have to take the kids and drop them off, or they have to go see a family member, or they have to do some task. They have to be in a meeting. And instead of seeing it in a different way, life can become a burden. And it's more than just changing the language, saying, I get to do something or I'm happy to do something. What we feel inside is what we feel inside. And sometimes life feels like a burden. However, we have to determine whether or not it is a burden or a blessing. A burden or a blessing. So I kind of have this idea that burdens come to us sometimes, whatever we're experiencing, even if it's good to someone, it may feel like a burden to another. And why is that? Why is it that something that seems like it's so pleasant and we are dreaming of it, wishing we had it, and it doesn't matter how much money you have, doesn't matter how many people you have around, doesn't matter how much family you have, how much support you have, how healthy you are. Some people, no matter where they are, they feel that life is indeed a burden. They never seem to feel happy about any of the things that they have to do, even though they may have more, may have been gifted with good health, they may have family, they may have children, they may have houses, lands, property, success. Whatever it is, we see it all around us. And it seems that people are traversing through life heavy with a burden. Well, I think the difference between burdens and blessings have to do with our Creator, have to do with our relationship with God. And yes, it sounds really preachy right now, but I want to say to us that it's important to realize that the burden of life comes to us because we find ourselves trying to do life, whatever it is we're doing, without certain things. We find ourselves trying to do life without God's presence or the presence of our Creator. In other words, it's really hard to be able to navigate a situation and circumstances that seem out of control without a peaceful presence keeping you. And without that presence, it leaves us feeling like we are burdened. It is a difficult thing to find ourselves trying to use our gifts, trying to engage things, trying to change the world, trying to help those around us and not feel burdened. We just came through and we're still navigating through uh, a pandemic, a time in which the world had not seen in a long, long time, and certainly not in my lifetime. where the numbers of people who were getting sick and dying, the fear that had taken over the world, the freezing of the stock market, the slowing down of everything that we have known, put us in a place where it changed everything. And to navigate that space alone was too much for many to bear. How do you deal with grief? How do you deal with the loss of loved ones? How do you deal with the decimation of your entire family? It is hard enough to do when things are going well, but to do them by yourself is another thing. And so the presence of our Creator, the presence of whatever it is that you believe in, but the presence of that aids us in being able to know that it's not all burden, but some of it can be a blessing. How do I know? Because I watched caregivers in the hospital take what should have been breaking and devastating to their own minds and souls, and families who have gone through so many things, loss, unspeakable pain, and discover that you find something on the other side. It's like the Alfred Lord Tennyson poem, Flower in the Granite Wall. It is one of those things. I think the poem goes something like this, and I am misquoting it, I am sure, but I remember it from my second grade class. Flower in the granite wall, how I went, what you are, root and all. It is a story of a flower that was growing up out of the concrete and did not have light to help it grow, and decided to press its way through the crack in a wall, in the crannies of the wall, to get light from the other side. Its root system was on one side. Things were dark and dreary and not so good on one side, but the flower's determination to find light made it follow that light through the cracks in a wall in order to bloom on the other side. Many of us have felt that way, that we have felt that life was a burden only to press our way to our blessing, to be able to see the light of the sun like that flower in the granite wall. And the only way to do that is that when you know that you have the support and the strength of your Creator, I say God, being present with you through it. I also think that it is a burden when we find ourselves trying to do it without God's, yes, provisions. It's hard to try to make things happen on your own, manipulate circumstances, try to figure out what's going to happen tomorrow, anticipate challenges all the time. It is nerve-wracking for most people when they can't even just try to balance their checkbook. How about trying to keep all of the things that we have going on in our life, matching it, making it work without the provisions that are necessary? And when we find ourselves without seeing the provisions, we get stressed and overwhelmed and tired and cranky. And yes, people do awful things to each other when they feel like the resources are scarce and they have to take it in order to survive. That is what the world tells us that we have to do. I believe that there's another way. I believe that there is plenty enough if we would allow ourselves to trust that the provisions come from a source that are not our own. Yes, I wake up every morning without actually making myself wake up. Yes, I set my clock, but nothing says that I am promised to wake up. And working in the hospital has taught me an awful lot that all the things that we take for granted are not necessarily so for everyone. And so that we are always reminded that the source of our life comes from our Creator. And we ought to always be mindful that as I call God, God provides for my needs. Every morning, every day of my life, I am 53 years old, and I can say without a doubt that there has been something beyond me that is provided away from me. Not my mom, not my dad, not my grandparents, not my friends, not my loved ones. Something beyond us has provided for our needs. So that the old hymn writer used to write it this way: Great is thy faithfulness, O God our Father. Morning by morning, new mercies we see. All we have needed, your hands have provided. Great is thy faithfulness, Lord, unto me. That's my hymn. I like it, and I'm sharing it with you. That somehow what we need will be provided if we trust the one who created us to do it. not making it on our own. Otherwise, it feels like a burden, a grind, something that you have to get and go do. Work becomes a burden. Friendships become a burden. Marriages become a burden. Raising your children become a burden. But if you enter into it knowing that you'll have what you need for your friendships, have what you need for your family, have what you need for your children, have what you need for your marriage, you'll discover that whatever you need will be provided. So it takes the burden off, and then you can see the blessing of family, the blessing of children, the blessing of a job, the blessing of your career path, the blessing to be able to share happiness and joy with someone, the blessing of being a doctor in the hospital and seeing someone have hope for another day, the blessing of being a chaplain in the hospital, that knowing at people's worst moments of their life, they find hope and joy and strength in trusting something beyond themselves. That becomes a blessing and not a burden. Finally, let me hurry on. It is important to note that the difference between a burden and a blessing is not just allowing for ourselves to know that we can't do it without God's presence or God's provisions, but I say God's power, the fueling of our lives. Yes, it is that which allows us to see that we can't get very far without some support and help. So I thought about this, and it's really great to see. I love Marvel comic movies, and I have not invested watching much of Thor, the Thor series. So I wanted to see what happens with this godlike demigod character who has the ability to control thunder in a hammer. I mean, it's great. I don't know about you, but I don't know much about it. So for those of you who are Marvelites, please correct me, send me an email, help me along the way. But Thor has the power to command his hammer like thunder, and he can launch it, and it does what it needs to do. And all he has to do is reach out his hand, and it comes back to him. With power, he can do just about anything. I think sometimes some of the things that we find ourselves doing, we feel powerless to do. We don't feel like we have the ability or the oomph to make it happen. And every now and then we get a jolt that ignites us and encourages us to do what we need to do. I hope these messages in the morning offer you power and engage you to remember why you were here, why you're doing what you're doing. And I think our power comes in the fact that we remember every now and then why we're doing what we're doing. I have seen doctors, I've talked with nurses, I've talked with those who work in every aspect of the hospital and in life. And I've discovered that many people, after starting out really focused, when the weariness of life comes upon them and they feel burdened, it is because they have forgotten what it is that they were doing and why they did it in the first place. Some people call it remembering your why. But I think in doing so, it actually gives you power to stop chasing rabbits that are not real, power to not be so overwhelmed with all the things that are happening around us, power to not try to build the kingdom in one day, but to remember that we have one moment and one life that we're living, and we get to share it with other people. And it is a blessing if you let it. Life doesn't have to be a burden, no matter how difficult it may be. It really can be the blessing that it is. It all depends on how you see it and whether or not you see it through the eyes of your Creator. Your purpose for being here is not simply for you, but it's because there's a reason for you waking up this morning, and there's a reason for you engaging in the work that you do each week. Even if you're in the hospital as a patient, there is something that you are called to engage in as you discover your life ahead of you. And if you're not in the hospital, not in healthcare, but you're walking into the grocery store, you'll be surprised what a smile, an encouraging word, a wonderful gesture can do to change an entire life or what happens to a person along the way. I recall walking the streets of downtown as a young man, kid, really, watching people go to work. Didn't have a lot of money. My mom didn't have a lot of money. We were trying to struggle through life. And was inspired by watching people with careers. A kid who never saw a whole lot, now seeing people in careers going to work and doing things as me and my buddies would make our way down town to Busch Stadium, carrying a box that had shoe shine on it. None of us knew how to shine shoes, but we would hang out at the ballpark hoping to gain entrance to the ballpark, or someone would be kind because we just wanted to be around Cardinal baseball. What we discovered along the way is that by being there, the smiles, the encouragement, and the players coming out, like Ozzie Smith, giving us an old glove or an old broken bat, inspired us to be able to do something else with our lives. Those who were going to work downtown inspired us to see that we could have careers and be professionals in our lives. Those I met along the way who were educators said something to me along the way that you can be whatever you want to be if you try. And so we find that life is not always a burden, but it can definitely be a blessing. I hope you enjoy the blessing of life today. Enjoy your life, enjoy the blessing that comes with it, and enjoy the people that you meet along the way. You'll be surprised. It just might change your entire life. Have a good one, have a blessed week, and enjoy what God is giving you.